Well, James Bays is now back from Syria and live with me on the set. James, having endured the hardships of a swimming pool in Homs province, tell me a little bit more about this whole defection story and how they see it there, because it is one of the classic ploys of counterinsurgency warfare is to claim that everybody else wants to defect but are fearful to do so. Having spoken to these guys on the ground, I mean, how much credibility do you think there is now?
Well, they certainly say it, and you'd expect them to say it, that the other side all want to defect. They also say that when they capture a checkpoint and they are going around, despite the bombardment, every week or so, trying to take another little bit of territory in the town that I was in. When they take that checkpoint, they say they normally find people who say, yes, we've been trying to defect, we want to join you. They also make the point that as well as defectors, they have spies in the national army, and they always know what the Assad side are going to do and when they're going to plan an offensive. There's very little preparations they can make, of course, because they're outgunned, and the Assad forces have the tanks, they have the helicopters, they have the rockets, and they have the mortars.
I mean, the cynical question is, clearly, if it is as they have been presenting it to you, then what explains the fact that they're still not making any real headway here? I mean, Assad has the tanks and the forces, but if everyone wants to defect, what's preventing them from doing so?
I think it's being made very hard for them to defect. All leave is cancelled. If you are on a checkpoint and you are there and you're on the front line and you have officers who don't want to allow you to join the other side, then it's very hard, I think, for you to defect. And I think the penalties for defection are very brutal. There are officers who are loyal to the regime, and they will shoot those who they don't think are loyal.
What do these people make of the Kofi Annan mission and the attempts to achieve peace through dialogue? Because it is the Free Syrian Army that is refusing under any circumstances to have a dialogue except under their terms. Do they see any point to these current proceedings? Well,
I was watching the meeting that took place today in Damascus, and although I wasn't with members of the Free Syrian Army, and I have been for the last 5 days, today it was clear to me what they would have said about that meeting, because it was a meeting with Assad. And they say, and they've made it quite clear, and they're not prepared to compromise on this, that Assad can be no part of the future. Him and his inner circle have to go. So any deal that involves him, any deal that Kofi Annan does with him, will be totally unacceptable to them.
The inner circle question, though, is also yet to be determined. I mean, they have said quite clearly they don't want anybody involved with the previous regime, which pretty much paints a very, very large number of people in the country, doesn't it?
Well, it's a problem that we've seen during which the Americans had to deal with during the occupation of Iraq by the Americans. It's a problem that exists in Egypt. It's a problem that's existed in Tunisia and in Libya. Where do you draw the line? Who is acceptable and who is not, and who counts as part of the old guard of the old regime? Certainly the FSA fighters, when you ask them that question, in the new Syria that you envision, who should be allowed to stay and who should be arrested, they say anyone with blood on their hands who is part of the security apparatus at a high level must go.
Interesting. James Bays, thanks very much, James.